is overwatering. People love to water. Put in it, I'm going to solve my problems, I'm going to put in a sprinkler system in, and I'm going to have the best lawn ever. Next thing you know, you got so much disease in your lawn, your things are turning brown, you water every day, you go away, get into a drought situation, your lawn turns brown in a heartbeat. It's usually because of water. All you need is really, when I have my sprinkler system in my yard, once a week I water. That was it. I turn it on, let it run for about 2 hours on that timer, and that was it. Maybe, okay, the next section the next day, I would put it on again in the morning. But a lot of times people have a tendency to put it on every day for 15 minutes. Well, if you ever saw when we watering out here, if I put something on for 15 minutes, it maybe gets about that much down into the container of the plant. It's the same thing with your lawn. It's only going to stay wet at that top layer. It won't penetrate down. And by the time the sun comes out in a windy day like today, if you only watered that much, it's going to just dissipate. It's going to dry right up. So what happens is, next thing you know, the roots that should be driving down where there is some moisture down below, and if you don't water as much, they'll have a tendency to look for water. But when it has a lot of water, next thing you know, they're just going to stay right up top. And then if there's a problem with grubs, you don't have that nice deep root system. You'll have that problem up there. You'll also have the problem with if all of a sudden you're away and we get a really droughty time frame in really hot sun, you'll find that it burns up a little bit faster because there's no root system in there. It takes away and it compacts a lot of the soil and it gets rid of a lot of the oxygen that the roots need to survive. So a lot of times too much water will reduce the oxygen level, and what happens is in your soil, the texture of your soil, and you'll have those air pockets here and there in between the granulars that have oxygen in there. Next thing you know, they're filled with water, and it's not, you're suffocating the roots a little bit. So watch out on the sprinkler systems. Like I say, I used to just water once a week. And the other big thing too, if you find that you water quite a bit, you start getting a little bit more red thread. You might start getting a little bit more pursuing. A lot of diseases start developing when you start putting in more and more and more water. And that's the other problem is when you start getting those diseases and these little circular, especially dollar spot. Dollar spot starts off, you walk out on the lawn and you look and you see all these little look like cobwebs in your lawn. You're going, geez, what's that? You see all these little cobwebs. Next thing you know, you got a little spot like here and there, and next thing you know, you got a bigger spot, and geez, I've got to water more, my lawn's drying up. And then you're adding more water and more water. It's like having athlete's feet and going to the shower. Keep going to the shower. You aren't going to get rid of athlete's feet. It's going to get worse, and that's what happens with the lawn. The more water you put on, there's a disease problem. Generally, it just keeps on getting worse, keeps getting worse, keeps getting worse.
Well, when the lawn sprinkler guy comes, he sets it up to water 3 times a week, a half an hour each zone. And you're saying, no, don't do that.
I break it down, longer time frames. Measure, see how much water it really gets in that area. That's not as bad as sometimes I see. It's every other day for 15 minutes. 3 times a day. But I wouldn't this time of year. Once or twice a week at the most this time of year. As it gets near the summer, maybe a little bit more if you need a little bit more at that point. But the more water, like I say, there's days that you don't need that much, and that top of that soil line always stays damp all the time.